Hi everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions, and welcome to this month's installment in our brand new crochet series for 2022, Shawl We Crochet. Every month we're going to be tackling a brand new shawl project and diving into the different shapes that you can use to create your shawl. Now this month, for the month of February, we are working on the beautiful Valentina Shawl, appropriately named in honor of Valentine's Day. And with regards to the shape, we're going to be looking at one of the most traditional shawl shapes that you see around, and that is the triangle. And the triangle can be worked from many different sides. In this tutorial, we are going to work our triangle from the center point out. So you might be thinking, well, where the heck is the center of a triangle? And in fact, actually, it's not even truly correct to say it's from the center out. If we were doing a full granny triangle from all shapes, then that would truly be from the center out. But we are basically working from the bottom center point of the long side, we'll call it, of the rectangle. So we're starting from the bottom and we're creating one point. From there, we're going to continue to build that point up and then continue the other 3 points along with it. And we are using the traditional granny motif, using the granny shells. And many of you love working on granny squares and granny motifs. And I thought a granny shawl, a triangle granny shawl would be the perfect project for you guys to dive into. So as you can see here, the granny shells create this beautiful like lacy effect. And what we've done is we've alternated between a granny shell row and then just a solid row of double crochet stitches. So the method is very easy to create. It's just that it will take you a little while until you reach, of course, the length of the shawl that you desire. And I have to say, my very favorite thing about creating this shawl is actually the border. And it's another reason why I call this the Valentina shawl, because if you can notice that, these are cute little heart-shaped emblems here that are forming our border. And when you look up close, it might not look quite heart-shaped, but when you pull it back like that, between the granny shell and the little scalloped edge, it just creates the perfect finishing touch for this very pretty shawl. And I just love how this drapes around and how it just fans right out and creates this beautiful texture. You can wear this with something casual on a nice spring day, or you can dress it up and wear it with a gown. It's nice and long. I think this would be pretty to wear for an outdoor event, maybe in the fall or something like that. Or if you know someone that just likes to have something over their shoulders around the house. I know some of my older relatives, they have some issues with just feeling cold around their back and shoulders. So creating a shawl is the perfect item for them. So without further ado, let's take a look at the materials we're going to need to create our Valentina shawl. So the yarn I'm using for this project is Wool Like by Loops and Threads, and it is considered a super fine weight #1. It's a 100-gram ball, and it comes with 678 yards or 620 meters. You will need about 2 of these. It'll depend on how long you'd like your shawl to be. But like, for example, the shawl in this photograph took 2 balls worth. Okay. And the color, in case you're wondering, it's just simply called red. And it is 85% acrylic and 15% nylon. So even though it says Wool Like, for those of you that are not a fan of wool, there's actually no wool in this, but it is quite soft and very lovely. So I've already started my first ball here and started working on the shawl. So you can see a little bit of how it's coming out there. Okay, so you'll need 2 balls of that. And the hook that I'm using for this project is a 3.5 millimeter hook, which is also known as a size F or a 5. And it's one of my favorite hooks to work with finer yarn. So if you are not a fan of fine yarn, you can certainly use a medium weight 4. I wouldn't recommend necessarily a bulky. It just might be a little bit too overwhelming, but a medium 4 weight yarn is also beautiful and lovely for this type of project. Just make sure you use the appropriate hook that goes according to that size, okay? As always, make sure you've got a pair of scissors and a darning needle on hand to sew in any ends at the end. So let's get going on our Valentina shawl. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And then we are going to chain 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, then we're going to find that very first chain and we're going to slip stitch into that chain to create a ring. Just like that. Now this is fine yarn, so it can get a little finicky at the very, very beginning. But if I pull that apart there, you can see the center of your circle is there. Okay, just like that. We're then going to proceed to chain 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now what we're going to do is into this little ring here, we are going to place 3 double crochets. So you're going to yarn over and insert your hook into the ring. Be careful because those are just loops from your slip stitch. You're going to go into the center of the ring and you're going to place 1 double crochet. And then you're going to go back again and place a 2nd double crochet. And now you're going to place a 3rd. So you can see the center of the circle there, much clearer now. Okay, so you've got your chain 4, and by the way, I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention that the chain 4 will count as a double crochet and a chain 1 space, okay? And then we've got 3 double crochets, which gives us our granny shell, our first granny shell. Then we will chain 2, and then back into that ring, we're going to place another shell, which is 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Then we will chain 1 and place 1 more double crochet back into that ring. And this ends off row 1 of our triangle. Okay, so you can really see that that triangular shape is taking form now. So you will always begin with a chain 4 and you will always end with a chain 1, 1 double crochet. So at the peak, you're always going to have a shell, chain 2, and shell. So this is the end of row 1. Let's move on to row 2. And things will change up just a little bit. So at the beginning of row 2, or every even numbered row, you will chain 3 only. 1, 2, and 3. You'll then turn your work, and into that chain space, you're going to place 1 double crochet. Just like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work into every stitch. So you can see that we've got 3 double crochets. So we are going to place 1 double crochet into the top of each stitch of that granny shell. So we have 1, 2, and we have 3. And once we get to the peak, we are going to work our typical 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. So that is always going to give us that lovely peak at the top. So I've done 3 there. Whoops, I need 1 more. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 2, and back into that chain 2 space, I will place another granny shell, which is 3 double crochets. Okay. Whoops. So you can see it's maintaining the integrity of the point there. Okay, so let's finish this round. We are going to continue on by placing 1 double crochet into each stitch. So you'll place 1, into the next one, and then into the next one. And now we've come up to that chain 1 space. You will place a double crochet into that chain 1 space, and then you will double crochet into the top of that chain 3. Just like that. And that completes row 2. Okay, so every even row will begin with a chain 3, and then we'll end with a double crochet into the top of that first chain 3. Okay, and at every peak, you're going to have a shell, chain 2, and shell. So every even numbered row is going to be a solid stitched row. Every odd numbered row is going to be a granny shell row. So let's move on to row number 3. And then you're just simply going to repeat row 2 and 3, 2 and 3 until you get the length that you desire. So for row 3, you're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll turn your work, and we are now going to go into the following stitch. So remember, we don't go into here. We go into the next stitch, and we place a granny shell into that stitch. So that means 3 double crochets all into that same stitch. Okay, just like that. So you can see the flat side of your work is taking shape there. After each granny shell, as your work grows, you will chain 1 to create a nice little spacer. Then what you're going to do is you're going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th stitch, you will place your next shell. So hopefully you can see that there. There's the second one. There's the 3rd. Okay, I'm done my next shell. I'm now going to chain 1, and now I'm up the peak. So into the peak, the chain 2 space, I'm always going to create my corner, which is 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. It's really straightforward. Once you get into the groove of this pattern, you can just zone out a little bit and crochet to your heart's desire. So I've chained 2, and then back into that same stitch, I'm going to do a granny shell. Okay, just like that. So every odd numbered row is going to have these little spaces here, which is going to create a really pretty lacy effect. And then of course you're going to chain 1. And now you will skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, and 3, and into the 4th stitch, whoops, you will place a granny shell. So we have 2, and we have 3. Oops. Okay, and then of course chain 1. And now we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, and 3. And we are going to place a granny shell into that space. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Then we'll chain 1 and place 1 more double crochet at the end. Okay, and that completes row number 3. Okay, so see on each end you always have a double crochet, chain 1 space, double crochet, chain 1 space. So at the beginning it's always a chain 3, or sorry, a chain 4. And that's what's going to help maintain the integrity of the points. So you've got a nice straight line along the bottom, and you have enough increases on each side that's going to allow your triangle to grow. So I'm just going to take you into row number 4 just to kind of get you into the flow. And then basically you are going to repeat row 2 and 3 over and over and over again, or you can consider it repeating row 3 and 4. Okay, so row 4 is an even numbered row, so that means it's going to be a solid row. So we're only going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to turn our work, and we are going to double crochet into the very next stitch. Right there. And that is what you're going to do all the way up to the peak. So into every stitch, you will place a double crochet. Okay. Remember on the back side of the work that the loops of the stitches sit to the left. And then when you come to your chain 1 space, place a double crochet into the space. So we are accounting for every single stitch going up along the sides of your triangle. Okay. And then you would go into the next stitch, and you would do that all the way up. Okay, and now I'm at my peak, so I am going to place 1 shell. So there is an increase in stitches always at the peak here. Okay. And then chain 2 and double crochet back into that same space. 3 double crochets. Okay, then right away to the very next stitch, you're just going to continue on as you did before. 1 double crochet into each stitch, including the chain 1 spaces. And if you want, you can work into the chain. I just think it's easier to work into the space. So that was the stitch I went into, the last stitch, see that? And now I'm going to go into the space. And then I continue on into the next stitch. And I'm coming down to the end of row 4. So I've just finished those last 3 double crochets. So remember, this is considered a chain 1 space, which represents 2 stitches. So you will place a double crochet into the space, and then you want to find the 3rd chain and place a double crochet into that. So remember, it's a chain 4 here, and 3 of those chains represents a double crochet. So we want to place our hook into the top of the 3rd chain and double crochet. Now you can, if you want to, place your last double crochet, just place it again into the space, and it's not the end of the world. Okay, so there we have row 4 complete, and you can really see your triangular shape taking form. Now, as you go along with this project, really get comfortable with stretching it, as you go. And this way you can gauge if you are putting too many stitches in somewhere or not enough, or if you're stitching too tightly or too loosely. So just go along as you work each row and don't be afraid to stretch it out. Make sure that the integrity of your shape is staying the same, okay? So this is pretty much it. You would now chain 4 and turn your work, and then right back into this space, you would create your first shell stitch, chain 1, and then remember you always skip 3 stitches, and into the 4th one, you are going to place your next shell. So just remember that the reason why we skip 3 stitches is if you were just doing it like a traditional granny row, these 3 stitches represent this shell here. So you would skip those anyway, and into the 4th stitch, you see the 4th stitch always represents your chain 1 space. So that is where we would work our granny shell, because usually we alternate the spacing. So hopefully that makes sense. And that is it. So this is where I leave you for quite a while. You will create your triangle until you reach your desired length. For me, I worked 80 rows in total. Okay, so you know what to do. I'll meet you back here in a while, and then we will talk about our finishing border. Okay, so I have done a total repetition of 40 repeats of those 2 rows. So I currently have 80 rows in total. Okay, so my shawl is looking something like this. This is my starting point, and here is my point down at the bottom. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our heart-shaped border for this, appropriately named Valentina Shawl. So now after I finished the 80th row where I just did 1 double crochet into each stitch, for your 81st row, what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and do your shell stitches as usual. These shells are going to be the base of that little heart-shaped border, okay? Now, what we need to do, so I've gone ahead and done mine, is once you get to this little corner here, we are actually going to continue with those shells along the top edge. So our top edge here is our raw edge, which looks just fine on its own. As you can see, that's where we did that. We always did the double crochet chain 1. But we are going to go around the corner here and continue these shells so that when we do the heart layer, or the little heart slopes on the top of that border, that it's all going to look uniform all the way around. So if you have any dips or anything here, that should kind of even it all out. But if you like this edge, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, you can leave it plain if you like. So I'm just going to take you through coming around the corner here to prep for our heart-shaped border. So if you have finished on a solid row, go ahead and do 1 more row of your granny stitches, granny shells, and I'll meet you up when you get to this corner here, getting ready to do your raw edge. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through how to come around this corner here. So I've just done my last granny shell where normally I would place it. I've chained 1, and so I've counted 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th stitch, I'm just going to do that granny shell as I normally would do. So that's 3 double crochets. And normally we would do a chain 1 and then do 1 double crochet into the space. What I'm going to do, because we're coming around the corner, is I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Normally I would chain 2, but because this is quite a tight corner, I'm just going to give it an extra chain. So I've chained 3, and now into the space I'm going to do a full shell. So we have 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets, and now you can see we've come around the corner there. Okay, so now we're going to work along that raw edge. So you're just going to continue as usual, chain 1 and shell stitch. But what we're going to do is we're going to find that space, see where that shell was from 2 rows down? We're always going to shell into that little space, which offers us a perfect opportunity. It's perfect spacing. So you're going to place 1, 2, and 3. And you really want to be careful that you don't stitch too tightly here, these first few shells, because you're just coming around this corner here, so you don't want it to pull or buckle. And then you'll chain 1, and then you'll find the next space. So you see that's sideways, that's the shell there, and there's the spacing. So our shell now is going to represent the V or bottom portion of that little heart shape for our border, and then we've got one more round to do where we're going to create the little bumps of our heart. So again, next space here. Okay, I'm not working into these spaces where we did the double crochet or chain 3. I'm going right into where the bottom of that shell was placed. So I'm just doing a few here so that you can see the effect. Okay, and then chain 1 and continue. So now you can see that so let me put that down there so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, so we had the shell stitch that we did along the regular edge, then we came around the corner with that chain 3. See how it wants to curl a little bit? And now we're going along the raw edge, which is really cool because it matches nicely with the shells that are there, and you can't even tell where the edge is. So I really love that. Okay, so that is what you're going to do to finish off your last round, and you're going to go all the way across. You're going to come across your center here, which should fit nicely, and then you continue on. Okay, all the way to the end when you get to that very first shell we created. From here, we're going to do the final touch, which is create that little scalloped edging that gives us that heart-shaped shape for your border. So press pause, and I'll meet you back here in a little bit. Okay, so I have now done the whole border all the way around with just the shell stitches. So you can see now it's gone along across the top. So it does create a cool little effect there. Okay, and so the final touch, the reason why I'm calling it the Valentina shawl, is a very subtle but impactful border. And we are going to actually shape these little shells to look like hearts. Okay, so the bottom of the shell really looks like the bottom portion of the heart, right? That little V portion. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I've just slip stitched to join. I've come around the final corner here. Okay, just like that. So I did my corner and I slip stitched. So what's going to happen is I'm actually going to now chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to go back into this space and double crochet. So yarn over and into the space, I'm going to double crochet. Just like that. Okay, and now I'm going to find the middle stitch of the shell. So I'm going to skip the first one into the second one. I'm simply going to slip stitch. Just like that. So that creates the first little bump of our heart shape. Okay, then we're going to chain 3 again. 1, 2, and 3. And back into that space I just slip stitched out of, I'm going to double crochet. So that is essentially what we're doing every single time. We're going to chain 3 and then double crochet back into the same stitch. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into the space. Just like that. And there you've completed your first heart shape. This one looks a little wonky because it's on the space there. But see, every time you slip stitch, it creates the bump, and those are the bumps of the top portion of the heart. So let's go and do it again in the next one. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing into the next one. You're going to chain 3, and then you will double crochet back into that space. Then you will find the second stitch of the shell, so you'll skip the next stitch into the following stitch. You will slip stitch and then repeat. Chain 3, double crochet back into that same stitch, and now you're going to skip the next stitch and you're going to go into the space and slip stitch. Just like that. So that creates the bumps of your heart shape. Okay, so I'll do one more. I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, double crochet back into the space, then you skip the next stitch into the following stitch. You will slip stitch, then chain 3, double crochet back into that same stitch, then you will skip the next stitch, and into the space you will slip stitch. And that is what you're going to repeat all the way down. See, so from afar they look like hearts. Okay, so that is my simple, quaint little border with heart shapes all the way around, and your Valentina shawl will be complete. So again, your shawl will be a considerable size now, so it'll take you a little while. Just take your time and you will be done in no time. And if you decide you want to leave yours plain, then you are pretty much done. But I'm going to finish my heart-shaped border, and then I'll show you guys the final reveal of my Valentina shawl. And voila, here is the full Valentina shawl in all of its glory. I just love the drape. I love the laciness of it, and I just love the length and how it wraps around so beautifully. I'm so happy with it, and I hope you enjoyed working on this. It probably took a little while because we were using a very fine yarn, but I promise you, if you hang in there, the end result is gorgeous. Now, I'd love to see how your shawl turned out, so make sure to tag me on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, by the way, at The Stitch Sessions. And I always am so curious to see the different colorways that you choose, the different fibers. So please do share your end result with me, and I'd love to see them. Now, if you have any questions, maybe I didn't cover something in the tutorial, make sure you can pop them for me in the description box down below. Or as always, you can reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com, and make sure to come over and visit me on the website crochetcrafty.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter, because as many of you know, I gift a free written pattern every month. So if you've gone through the Etsy shop, which I'm slowly trying to build up my written patterns, and you haven't seen a particular item there, check the archives of our newsletter, which is on the website, because sometimes you can find that I've given it away as a free written pattern. And of course, if you are new here and you had a good time hanging out with me for this tutorial today, please subscribe and come and join me. I upload a brand new video every Wednesday morning. And make sure to turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss another episode. And also, if you are liking this crochet series for 2022, make sure to give me a thumbs up, because I'm always curious to see what series are more popular than others. And by the way, I'll also leave a link in the description box down below for the playlist to many of our previous crochet series. Last year was our Life's a Beach crochet series, and the year before that we did Year of the Bride crochet, and then we had the 12 Gifts of Crochet the year before that. So lots of fun ideas for you and lots of great projects to dive into. So other than that, guys, I hope you have an amazing day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves as always, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's session. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.